would share with you today how I knit the half and half triangles wrap by Purl Soho. In my hand here is a mini swatch, if you will. Not so much for gauge, but for practicing of technique and for the purposes of this video to share with you how I knit this wrap. It is a free pattern by Purl Soho, and the way I knit it is slightly different from the instructions. Instead of wrap and turns, I use German short rows for the short row method, and I slip my last stitch on the edge to create a slip stitch edge. My garter ridges run in line with each other between the colors, so they are parallel, not perpendicular. And I use a stitch marker to mark the right side of my fabric, since a garter fabric can look the same from the front and back, especially if the color change part hasn't happened yet. It can sometimes be confusing which side you may be working on when you are starting to add in your short rows and just figuring out where you are at. So I am going to unravel this, and we are going to start from the beginning, and I will share with you how I knit this. So I'm using double pointed needles here today and worsted weight yarn, which is not what the pattern calls for the actual one, but I'm just gonna grab one that I'm working on currently to kind of share with you what it looks like. So it is all garter, and here's the color change part. And my stitches between the two colors are parallel. So they're all in the same direction. It is not perpendicular on the other color for the colors change. There are different tutorials out there and various modifications, and this is just the way that I knit it. I do have a tutorial out for how to do a no estimate Old Norwegian cast on or a long tail cast on, and I will link to that here on the screen and in the description box below this video. For the demonstration, I am only going to cast on 10 stitches. The pattern gives an option of casting on 190 stitches or 260 stitches. So here I've cast on my 10 stitches, and the first instruction after cast on is to knit to the end of row. And this is going to be the right side, so I will knit to the end of row, and then because a garter piece of fabric looks the same from the front and back, I will place a stitch marker on the right side of the fabric that I am creating to differentiate that from the wrong side. So after I knit those 10 stitches, I will take my marker and just place it on a stitch indicating the front. Okay, so this marker will indicate the front of my fabric. The next instructions are to turn it around and on the wrong side, knit to the last 3 stitches. Because I am doing a German short row instead of a wrap and turn, I need to go one more stitch over. So I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches. And then I'm going to turn and then slip the last stitch on the left needle to the right needle and pull my working yarn to the back. Then I will place my marker on the right needle in front of the double stitch. Knit these stitches to 1 stitch remaining, and then I will bring my working yarn to the front and slip that stitch from the left to the right needle. This will create a tidy edge of knit stitches instead of having a garter edge. So now I'll turn to the wrong side again, and I will knit to the marker marker, turn my work, slip from left to right, working yarn pulled to the back, replace marker. Now knit to the last stitch, bring working yarn to the front, slip from left to right, turn. So far, looking from the wrong side, I have 2 stitches on the left that are not double stitches, followed by 2 double stitches, and then my stitch marker. So I'm going to keep going here. Knit to the marker, remove marker, turn work, slip from left to right, pull working yarn to the back, replace marker, knit to the last stitch. Bring working yarn to the front, slip from left to right, turn work. Knit to the marker, remove marker, turn work, slip from left to right, pull working yarn to the back, replace marker, knit to the last stitch. Bring working yarn to the front, slip from left to right, turn work. I'm going to show the edging here. Now you can see that slip stitch on the edge. So I'm almost done. I'm going to finish these last few stitches. The pattern indicates that you should finish on a right side row, and then on the wrong side it says to knit 1, remove marker, and do a wrap and turn. So what I'm going to do is knit these 2, remove marker, turn my work, pull the working yarn to the back, bring it around to the front, and then slip that last stitch like I've been doing. And so this is the right side of my fabric. Now I'm going to turn it to the wrong side of my fabric. And on the wrong side is when I'm going to resolve all of these double stitches. So I'm going to knit across, making sure I catch both legs of that double stitch. So something to note is that the number of stitches you cast on, that should always be the number of stitches on your needles. You're never increasing or decreasing the number of stitches on your needles. Just how many stitches that you are working at a time changes. So now I've knit across all those stitches. I'm going to turn my work back around to the front. And this is where you would cut your first color. Because I'm just working with a small amount of yarn here, I'm not actually going to cut, I'm just going to leave it be. And the next thing in the instructions is to join color B, and that is on the right side. So now I'm going to pick up color B, and the instructions say to knit to the end of the row on the right side. For row 2 of color B, it says to knit to the end of the row on the wrong side. I'm going to turn it around. So I'm going to knit 2 here. And turn my work, slip from left to right, and pull my working yarn to the back, and then back around to the front, and slip the stitch from left to right. Turn my work around, and on color B, we will be resolving the double stitches as we go. So I'm going to knit this first stitch, knit the double stitch, knit one more stitch, turn my work, slip from left to right, pull my working yarn to the back, knit one, bring my working yarn to the front, and slip that last stitch. Because this double stitch is being worked right away, and it's clear to me that I knit to one past the double stitch, I don't always put in a marker, but you can if you want to. So then I knit that one past the double stitch, turn my work, slip from left to right, pull the working yarn to the back, knit until I get to the last stitch, bring my working yarn to the front, and slip that last stitch over. So my triangle is now growing on the right here, and my garter lines will be more clear that they are parallel once I have more going. So I'm going to keep knitting here, knit to the double stitch, knit one past the double stitch, turn my work, slip the last stitch from the left to the right, bring the working yarn to the back, and knit to the last stitch, bring the working yarn to the front, slip the last stitch from left to right. And we will continue all the way to the end. Okay, I'm almost to the end. I have this duplicate stitch here and then one more stitch at the very end. So I'm going to knit across, knit my double stitch, knit the last stitch. Now I'm going to turn it over to the wrong side and bind off knitwise. What I prefer to do to prevent a very tight bind off is to use a needle that's 2 sizes larger than the one I'm knitting with. So per pattern, I use a US 3, so I use a US 5 double pointed needle in my right hand to bind off. That way I don't have to mess with the tension as I'm binding off to be extra careful that it's loose. I just have a larger needle in the right hand. For the purpose of this demonstration, and I'm just going to use the same size double pointed needle and just bind off knitwise. I will knit the first 2, slip that first stitch over the second stitch, and work all the way across. And then this yarn can be cut, pull through that last loop. And there you have it. Here is a mini version of the half and half triangles wrap. There is a tidy color transition line, and the garter bumps, the garter ridges here, all run parallel, so they just continue into the next color. I hope you found that helpful. Happy knitting!